Gli spaghetti al dente e un partigiano come presidente, con l'autoradio sempre nella mano destra, un canarino sopra la finestra. Buongiorno Italia con i tuoi artisti, con troppa America sui manifesti, con le canzoni, con amore, con il cuore, con più donne e sempre meno suore. Buongiorno Italia, buongiorno Maria, con gli occhi pieni di malinconia. Buongiorno sì, lo sai che ci sono anch'io. Lasciatemi cantare.
Welcome to the Spotlight Dialogue episode 30, the evening show. It aims to raise awareness about the importance of alternative fuels, as well as serve as a powerful reminder of our collective responsibility to shift towards renewable energy sources and free our economies from the chains of fossil fuels. The UN General Assembly, UNGA, hold a global stock taking on sustainable energy meeting to assess progress and recommend solution on SDG 7. It is about ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And SDG 8 is about decent work and economic growth. Where this episode, we will take this dialogue coinciding with Global Energy Independence Day. Also, a Schumpeterian perspective, innovation as described by Schumpeter in 1911 is the only source of true economic development intended as a discontinuous change in economic life. I'm your host, Stephen Poon. Good evening to all the audience tuning in. The Spotlight Dialogue 30 is brought to you by the regular team of the Special Interest Group in Circular Economy from Integrated Sustainability and Creative Strategies Research Cluster, acronym as ISUCS, also known as ISUCS, at Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, APU. Before I take off with this episode this evening, a quick rundown on innovation is at the core of the process of creative destruction, generating the endless flow of cyclical fluctuation, the search for new energy solutions, and their application to the production process will change, and it is changing our lives in the way Schumpeter imagined. For this process to be sustainable both from the economic and energy standpoints, it needs to be the result of bottom-up process of creative destruction, which in turn paved the way for indigenous economic growth. Our topic for the dialogue today: empowering markets to accelerate action, sustainability, energy innovation, and economic growth. Our guest for today's show, CEO of the Center of Market Education, CME, and a senior fellow at the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, IDEAS, which is acronym as IDEAS in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He is also research advisor for Ferlito Nusa Property in Jakarta, Indonesia, and senior fellow at the Property Rights Alliance in Washington, D.C., United States. Since May 2024, he is also a visiting research fellow at Central Bank of Malaysia, BNM Bank Negara Malaysia. He has applied his theoretical analysis to policy studies, in particular to the Malaysian property market and housing policies, and to the issues of financial literacy, cost of living, and agriculture policies. His opinions have been reported by several Malaysian and international media, such as the Financial Times, The Age, The Star, the Malaysian Reserve, Free Malaysia Today, and the radio station BFM 89.9, the Jakarta Post, and the Business Recorder. Here we are. Please welcome Dr. Carmelo Ferlito.
Hi. Good evening. Thank you, Stephen, for having invited me.
Hi, Carmelo. Good evening to you. Buonasera. How are you doing?
Buonasera, selamat malam. Apa kabar?
Okay, good. How are you doing today? What have you been doing the whole day?
It's been a long day. I mean, it's intense of work, but as it should be. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to almost close my day with you, because actually we will have some video recording session for with our marketing team just after this podcast.
Okay.
It's a
Okay,
day
that's good. That's good.
going to be long.
Yeah, I know that we all been busy, don't we all? For my part, apart from research and also teaching, and this few weeks time is all end of the semester for certain cohort. So it's a lot to key in the marks, For my time, it's all over the place. I did prepare this, I did prepare that, and a meeting and classes and all things like that. But here we are. So I come to this evening. I have a little chill out. Well, not really chill out actually. I mean chill out with good old friend Carmelo Ferlito, and of course, we have a lot to talk about this. Especially those are the things that's quite concerning us, especially the energy, which is innovation energy market today. And this is also one of the things actually announced by the government from Malaysia about this, what is the expansion of this energy market, energy innovation. I think this is the timely for us to look into this issue. But of course, we are looking at the business development market point of view instead of like innovation, because energy can be misled to many people to understand that, we are talking about engineering, we're talking about all this, but actually we are not getting to that part of the dialogue. But today it's more towards to the marketplace today. But of course, there's a very niche area we are tapping into this, which is Schumpeter. So Joseph Schumpeter, I think this is a very niche to talk about this as well. I believe people, especially from the economic practitioner, they are very much into this part of the understanding. So especially if they're specializing this. Okay. Again, Carmelo, thank you so much for joining us, the Spotlight Dialogue. Let's get started to set the scene before we get into the dialogue. Okay, let me see. What is the notes here? Okay, let's do this. Based on panel ARDL, which is an auto-regressive distributed lag, and 3SLS, which is a three-stage least squares estimation, we find that renewable energy is beneficial to the economy and the environment. In contrast, innovation, non-renewable energy consumption, and trade result in environmental degradation in these emerging economies. So, Carmelo, why is it important that economic research redefines growth in a way that prioritizes sustainability and considers environmental externalities?
Well, thanks for this first question, Stephen. And let's say something that may sound a little bit as a scandal to the audience. So I would say that externalities are at the very root of economic theory. And indeed, if we think about Adam Smith, what is the concept of invisible hand, if not the first hint about externalities? In fact, when Adam Smith discussed and introduced the concept of invisible hand, he was simply saying that when we try to achieve our own interest, our own good, we produce unintended consequences on the rest of the public, on society, on the economic system. And Adam Smith was stressing the importance of positive externalities, so that by pursuing our own good, we do good also for other people. And this is quite common, if you think about the impact that enterprises, firms, economic activities have on the economy. It produces a lot of good. No, they create employment opportunities, they create fiscal benefit for the government, and etc. Now, obviously, there are also unintended consequences that may be negative. So, a firm that create a positive impact on the economy by creating jobs and creating development in a certain region can also create pollution, which is obviously a negative externalities. Or going more into a micro consideration, I can sit in a cafe and smoke a cigarette, and this may annoy you. Now, I think that while externalities are extremely important to be analyzed when we reframe the economic paradigm, they are also something that is extremely complex. And why is that? It's because while in general terms, we all can agree that pollution, in example, is a negative thing, or the fact that you smoke my smoke from my cigarette is a negative thing. If we go more in practical terms to define quantitatively how negative is that, then it becomes more complicated. What becomes complicated is the trade-off analysis. So let's take the case of the firm that create pollutions. So the best way to stop pollution is obviously to stop the firm from producing, so to shut down that firm.
Yeah, but logically, yes.
To shut down that firm has also a lot of negative consequences. So where is the balance between reducing the negative externalities and avoiding an extreme negative cost for the society? So in macro terms becomes how much is the cost that we can bear to stop pollution. And here is where another criticality that I think is very important when we analyze externalities is about the role of the government. So there is let's say a definition of what is a tolerable level of pollution and what is instead not tolerable. And that is quite a discretionary choice in which it's not hard science, 10, 11, 10.5, 9.5. It implies a sort of moral judgment. And this is the first point related to government intervention. The second point is that when we design a policy that is aimed at tackling externalities, we assume that that policy will be indeed achieving the target. Like, I pull the string of a guitar and I obtain a certain tune. But in policy design and implementation, things are not that automatic. So I think that while the analysis of externalities is extremely important, we also have to take out from that analysis what we consider to be automatic mechanisms deriving from policy choices. And here is where innovation becomes really crucial, because the way in which tackling externalities can become less painful and less complicated is by indeed nurturing innovation so that we can tackle that not by imposing additional costs on businesses, but by removing costs with the introduction of better technologies.
Okay, Carmelo, what are some of the recent developments in clean energy technologies that developing countries can leverage for sustainable growth? And what opportunities and barriers might they face in this?
So I think that the opportunities, for developing countries are the fact that they are latecomers, if we want to take jargon derived from economic history, in the process of industrialization. So they may be better placed when we talk about the adoption of new technologies, because they don't have the heritage of old industrial plants that, in example, are still surviving in many situations in more developed countries. Where the challenge is instead is uh, when when uh, when we adopt new technologies, if they are not uh, just sustainable from an environmental standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint, then they become a burden for the poorer part of society. And being developing countries, by definition, less rich than developed country, then the cost of imposing the right direction in the cost of imposing the wrong direction in the technological shift may be higher for developing countries than for developed countries.
How can firms be made more efficient and aligned with sustainable growth and account for the growing young population in developing countries?
Sorry, can you repeat it? But because the line was a little bit lagging.
Yeah, okay. How can firms be made more efficient and aligned with sustainable growth and also account for the growing young population, particularly in developing countries?
This, I think, is a very important question and an important topic, which goes also at the root of capitalism in some countries like Malaysia. And I take it from a wider perspective, but it is extremely related. You see, a country like Malaysia is characterized by an archipelago of small enterprises. Almost 98% of firms in Malaysia are small and medium enterprises. And of these, 78% are micro businesses. Okay. So I think that if we want to make possible a process of technological transformation in the direction of sustainability, we need to incentivize first a process of industrial concentration, because only firms of a certain size can have that kind of economies of scale that allow for technological innovation. You take a micro enterprise may even have the financial possibility, let's say, in example, to adopt a certain kind of technology. But maybe that kind of technology doesn't make sense for the scale of operations of that business. It becomes a cost that is never absorbed in the economic life of that firm. And coming to the point of youth, this will be also beneficial for the youth, because only enterprises with a certain size can offer not only sustainable development, but also social mobility opportunities for the youth. So better employment opportunities, better opportunities of a career, and a career that makes a difference.
Okay, in your point of view, where are investment needed to reap the energy adaptation and mitigation benefits of the city?
So I think that we have probably three directions. So one is, I think, an effort that needs to be done in terms of consolidation. Okay, as I just mentioned in the previous point, consolidation of firms. And this lead to the second point, which is R&D investment, because everything is about research and development. We want to find the next wave of innovation in the direction of sustainability, we need R&D investment. And this brings also to the third point. You mentioned particularly the point of cities. I think that is important, as I have written in several articles, that like a process like the one that Malaysia is experiencing of subsidy rationalization, so the attempt to go away from fuel dependence, from fossil fuel dependence, need to be accompanied with the development of an alternative system of mobility. And this will become financially sustainable if the private sector is brought into this component. So where we have the government and the private sector, but the private sector of a certain size, to work together for R&D, for new solution, for sustainable development.
Okay, just now I just tried to recap the part you mentioned about the innovation help balance growth and its externalities in economics. What kind of innovation in policy design is needed to ensure social protection intervention or resilience of the energy system, according to your point of view?
So I think that we need to have a shift in the approach to policy at this regard, in the sense that we need a higher degree of realism. So if I look at an example,
realist, illusionist, realist. I like that.
Because we all want to see a policy in which we all will be richer tomorrow.
Yeah. We want realist.
All richer. But is that possible? So
no,
if I look in example at the energy policy transition developed by the government, set a series of targets. I'm not saying that the targets are right or wrong, but nothing is written on how we are going to achieve those targets. So think about the micro life of an enterprise. It's very difficult for an enterprise to know where they will be tomorrow, how to achieve their growth target, how to achieve their turnover target, their profit target, their employment target. Imagine for someone that has to design a policy that has the ambition to change the life of millions of people. So, as an entrepreneur, I know how difficult it is. I mean, I have dream. I want CME to be the biggest think tank in the world tomorrow. But how do I do that?
I will be on your side.
And we are a very small organization, So imagine the government that says, I want to change the life of 30 million people in the next 5 years. It can be very well-hearted, but, between wish and actually accomplishing that wish, there is a lot of work to do. And the first step, I think, to implement that work is to be very realistic in the trade-off analysis. So that sustainability target, how much is going to cost? Everything has a cost. So we need to have policies in which the trade-off analysis is extremely careful, realist, and try to achieve maybe smaller targets, but that we can realistically achieve with bringing not too much costs on the society, but the benefit. And again, I think that ultimately, allow me to add this, ultimately the real game is really to incentivize R&D. Because you see, if we look at the history of innovation, the history of innovation is an history of making things cheaper. The people.
Exactly.
Innovation makes the people better off. So if something is extremely costly, it's not an innovation. Because innovation changes our life for the good. If you look at how computers changed our life, how internet make a lot of things more affordable to us.
It should be mass mediated, isn't it? Yeah.
But it's always been that when the steam power was introduced and we had the trains, These allowed people
Yeah.
to go from point A to point B faster. At the beginning, it was only for few people, but gradually became mass market. And innovation became
Yeah. For the
innovation
masses, yes.
when it changed the life of the masses. And this is not possible to be achieved with a policy design. In the whole history of
Exactly.
mankind, this has been the result of entrepreneurship exercised by visionary people. Later we will
Okay.
talk about.
Yeah, surely.
It's all about that. It's all about that.
Camilo, in furtherance of the point you made, energy is the material basis of national development, which supports national economic development. With the sustained and rapid economic growth, the energy problem has become the bottleneck hindering sustainable economic and social development. And countries around the world are paying attention to its impact. So, Camilo, should sustainable and pro-ecological economic development be an important determinant of shaping economic policy?
Yes, absolutely, it should. But then the point is in which way it should. I think that the way in which it should inform policy is not by saying that by having a government going around and say you should shut down by this year. You know, I have in mind my country, in which the government has decided to stop certain cars uh, by a certain date. This policy is obviously going to harm the poor people, because the poor people that has no money to buy an expensive ecological car, they have only choice to go with a bicycle. And we are talking about maybe retired people, old people that need to go around, you know, to buy their groceries. So a policy that is very well hearted is producing harmful consequences for the most fragile part of the population. So policy will help achieving the ecological targets if it will be a policy that incentivizes R&D and innovation. That is the
Okay,
way.
Camilo. Okay, Camilo, let's look at the Malaysian context here. Okay, is Malaysia economic growth sustainable? And what are the issues in growth, development, and sustainability in Malaysia?
So I think obviously Malaysia, like many developing countries,
Yep.
has an issue, you know, in terms of energy
Yeah.
energy
Okay.
supply. Energy mix is still behind in terms of sustainability, but this makes sense considering the level of income at which Malaysia stands. I have to say that when it is compared, and it's just enough to go and travel to neighbor cities like Jakarta or Bangkok or Manila to understand that the quality of the air in Kuala Lumpur is much better than in these other places. So Malaysia has a very strong system of public transportation when compared to the regional standards. So I think that Malaysia is not doing too bad, but I do believe that, and is to coming back to a point that I mentioned before, if we really want to have a bottom-up process of energy transition, which is driven by transformation into our mode of production, we need to incentivize industrial consolidation so that we have companies of a scale that they can adopt on their own an agenda for energy transition. That I think is a very needed, very much needed step for pushing our transformation agenda.
Okay, in your years of contextual practice and also understanding of the surroundings, especially in Malaysia context, what are the main determinants of the development of energy innovation sources?
Well, one is R&D costs, okay,
Okay.
and the other is obviously the availability of energy. So somehow, you know, when you have resources available cheaply, that makes you extremely malas to innovate.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't innovate.
Very lazy is to do the work. Yeah.
But that is when you are blessed, when you don't need to work much to
Yeah.
achieve something, then you become more lazy. So somehow this is
Yeah.
a dependence, on sort of is the curse of a blessing. Somehow being blessed can become being cursed.
Yeah. Everyone can lay back, isn't it?
Yes,
They don't have to do anything actually. So we have to
it's
blame the
normal. I mean,
innovation.
with the petrol at this price at the
Yeah.
pump, or the availability of other energies. Even if we think about agriculture, we know
Mhm.
how is the cycle of palm oil when compared to different cycles. Think about, in example, the poultry industry, which is the most successful livestock
Mm.
industry in Malaysia.
Mm.
Malaysia is self-sufficient in chicken production, but Malaysia
Mm.
doesn't produce feed, so is 100% dependence on the import of corn, or 95% dependence on
Mhm.
the import of corn from neighbor countries. And the fact that Malaysia has converted to to almost monoculture, let's say, to
Mhm.
palm oil, this has blocked because of the advantages that palm oil presents from a profit opportunities perspective. This has somehow blocked, in example,
Mhm.
development of corn production. Even rice is quite ridiculous that we are dependent on import of rice. If you think about it,
And then we are growing rice here.
when we are growing rice, but we still need to import a certain percentage of rice
Yeah.
from Thailand and from neighbor countries. So uh, I think
And
that some
I think it's also our like gas, our petroleum. The good one we produce or we export. So then we import the second rate. So it's strange, isn't it? We don't
no,
we don't
that
really
makes
get the
sense
advantage
from an
for that.
economic, from an economic perspective. That makes perfect sense, and that
Oh
was
yeah.
probably a policy uh, uh, to nudge in a different direction. Because, but I
Mhm.
think bigger companies are understanding that something is changing and things will not be the
Mhm.
same for the long period. But again,
Mhm.
this is a reasoning that small companies, which are the great majority, cannot afford.
Mhm. Oh.
Uh, so we need a higher degree of synergies between bigger and small
Mm.
companies if we want that process of transformation to actually be successful, and not only successful but sustainable in the long run. And when I mean
Mm.
sustainable, I mean what I mean by sustainable is economically sustainable. Because if an innovation is simply policy driven, as is very short lived.
Mhm. Okay, Camelo, technological innovation is increasingly promoted in the production, preservation, and consumption of energy, which is why smart energy is a real reality through which the process of energy transition is brought to the fore. Moreover, the concerns about smart energy production have positive consequences, not only on the environment, but also on consumers. What is the configuration of the synergy? You talk about synergy earlier on. So, what is the configuration of the synergy among energy innovations, environmental performance, digital transformation, economic globalization, and the sustainable development of the region?
Yeah, all these things are related, and they cannot be taken in isolation, and that's where the difficulties also of policy, comes into the fore. Because then you have a certain ministry that develop a certain policy for a certain things, but they
Mhm.
don't talk with the other ministry for that things, and the things, and the things don't happen because ministry don't dialogue. And that's why I favor bottom-up processes, in which, let's say, the policy framework is very much open, but then processes of innovation arise from the bottom, and they find their way to the markets. And thanks to process of globalization, which are very important, and the form is free trade, this knowledge
Mhm.
can be can be exchanged. I think that we talk very little about the importance of the economics of knowledge when we talk about innovation, but when also we talk about new environmental solutions, because ultimately everything, what is innovation if not primarily an idea? Is the research development is looking for new ideas in order to shape the future, and then these ideas contaminate each other and they go through the market test. No. And
okay, just now. Oh yeah, go on, please.
One point. I think at the very root of all this is indeed something that, again, is not talked enough, is education. And I think we have a fundamental flaw in our educational system, which is the emphasis on technical disciplines, technical subjects. Innovation often doesn't come from engineers, because technical knowledge can always be higher. But the real innovator is that person that challenges the way in which we do things. And that person has been nurtured into critical thinking. And critical thinking is nurtured by history, philosophy, geography, and literature, not by mathematics. The great innovators are imbued with the Faustian spirit of Goethe, which is challenging the way in which we do things. So innovation is primarily a philosophical thing.
Now it just reminded me, I know why the American education is all the science-based, tech-based of the study must be taking humanity subject. So in order to strike the balance, it's like not too over science-based, but there is the social sciences behind it to support the balance of the which is the upbringing development. I think this is part of the reason behind it as well. Okay, just only mentioned about policy. So let's get into these policy things. In innovation policy, how does economic growth prioritize over societal and environmental objectives and challenges?
See, we tend to think about economic growth as a process that is somehow driven by government or policy decisions. But it is not. This year, the GDP, let's say, will grow by a certain X%, not because the government has set that target, but because the economy works in a certain way. So the prime minister, the government, they are not CEOs of a company. They set up a growth target and they implement strategies it doesn't happen like that. So the result of the economy is the GDP will grow a certain percentage because all of us set our own targets and we try to achieve that. So that final percent at the end of the year is the result of our choices. That happens in the framework of rules and regulations that are set up by the government. But primarily, it is the result of our own choices. That's why, again, the importance of education. Then we can have an economic growth which is conscious and oriented toward a certain direction if we internalize the importance of those targets, and therefore we individually and as a society make those targets as part of our decision-making process. That I think is very crucial.
Global economic growth has increased the scarcity of resources, forcing countries to shift their focus to sustainable development. So, in your point of view, is it possible to achieve economic growth through sustainable technological transfer and sustainable innovations?
I think so. And I think so. I'm extremely positive and optimistic about the innovative spirit of mankind. this is not the first challenge that mankind encounters in its history. We had even bigger problems in the past. Think about when children mortality was extremely high. People were dying, and in certain part of the world, kids are still dying of certain illnesses. So, with all the imperfections of our human processes, but humans have proved to be extremely innovative. So, I think that when pressed by the urgency of dictated by the scarcity, human beings, mankind will find alternative ways to develop, and innovation will work primarily because we as human beings are not only innovative, but we are also adaptive. Actually, innovative people are a very small percentage of human beings. All the rest, like me, I guess, we are all adaptive. So we will adapt to the innovation that we will brought in by innovative spirits. I'm very positive about the creativity of human spirits.
Good to be optimistic. I think the creativity is the key word, especially after the pandemic. So now we are transitioning to the so-called another era, which is the world with full of artificial intelligence, all the forefront, all the cutting edge of the innovation. So I think creativity has to taking a very important role in this context. All right, Carmelo, I think it's a time to take a look at the question posted by the audience. Let's look at the first question. I think the question was from the one, I think the audience, but did not announce the name. Now, what is currently the most effective and efficient energy solution? How have clean energy technology transformed economies and society so far? So this is the one the question from the audience. What do you think?
I will not answer to the first part because it's a very engineering question, I guess, and I don't want to venture into a territory which is not mine.
Okay.
I come from the humanities, so I don't want to interfere with the work of other people. But if we look at the transformation, I think that people that are in my generation, they remember when even walking on a street was smelling the pollution from cars or trucks and the noise of trucks. We tend to be, short with a short memory, but if we look a little bit, just 20, 30 years ago, not too long ago, we could see that our cities, in terms of smoke and in terms of noise, were different. So I think they have transformed in this sense. But look also at safety. How much safer our means of transportation, in example, have become so far. Sensors, autopilot. So I think that if we had to write a history, a recent history of energy technologies for the past 30 years, we would be surprised of how they change our life and how we struggle even to realize how these things actually happen. Even the GPS, and more smarter transportation, less time in queue, the auto stop of the car. It's amazing.
So I think from my point of view, probably I can share my thought, although I'm non-engineer myself as well. But I think as a layman, to understand the first part of the question, the most effective and efficient energy solution, my point of view as a layman, probably understanding the energy efficiency in homes, especially the efficiency refer to the ability of the home to use energy in a way that minimizes the waste or maximizes the output. And also the energy efficient lighting solution, like for instance, the LED bulbs and the fixtures. and smart lighting system, for instance. And of course, another point like efficient heating and cooling solution. Like for some of the country, they're having which is a cold season, so they need heating. Like for us, like tropical country, like cooling solution, like programmable thermostats, and also high efficiency HVAC system, for instance. So this is probably what I can think of there. And proper insulation materials, like air leakage reduction, things like that. And of course, we can think of the energy efficient like appliances, like Energy Star certificate appliances, for instance, monitoring devices. Of course, the most important things are renewable energy sources for homes, like solar panels, like wind turbines. So I think these are the things I can really share with everybody, which is. But of course, I'm not an engineer just like everybody else, like what Carmelo talked about that. But of course, these are the so-called general knowledge that I can share with the audience, especially to respond to these questions. Okay, Carmelo. So now we are going to change the gears a little bit. We have been talking about and all the concerns that we have been discussing on the show. I would like you to be able to share your ideas and see what other listeners are thinking about that in a little bit. It is a fundamental truth that innovation has a positive and significant effect on economic growth, which is supported by Schumpeter's innovation theory in 1911, which is you have talked about that, which is before we come into this life. We discussed about that earlier on. So Schumpeter has claimed that development is deemed a historical process and structural changes. So these changes are driven by innovative ideas and their execution in the tangible form, either in the shape of products, services, or industries. So Schumpeter has advised the nation to adopt novel and innovative methods of production to spur the economic growth. Innovation may assist in the opening of the new market avenues at domestic and the international levels and develop competitive business development along with the industrialization, which may revolutionize the economic system of the country. So, in your point of view, what is the status of the economic stability of the most innovative countries in the current situation?
Well, thanks for raising Schumpeter. I think I spent too much of my youth reading his books, and rather than doing other things that usually the young people do.
So I know that this is your favorite area, so that's the reason I like to get into this part of the discussion. Go on then, Carmelo.
I read so much about him and of him that I could write a movie script about his life, and which was a very eventful life, by the way. But one key point of Schumpeter innovation theory is that indeed innovation doesn't create stability, but creates instability. And the capitalism is alive as far as there is innovation. But as far as we have innovation, capitalism will progress through a boom and bust cyclical movement. So, but this is unavoidable, okay? And is a positive fact. And I will make an example that I think the Malaysian audience will understand very well. If you remember, just a few years before the pandemic and the lockdown, there was a new phenomenon in town, the bubble tea.
Yeah.
You remember the bubble tea? And I called once in an interview, I spoke about the bubble tea bubble. So we had a bubble of bubble tea. And this was something extremely Schumpeterian. So you have the first innovator that enter a market with a new product, in this case, the bubble tea. And because the bubble tea model is successful, then many other people enter the wave. And so many people will open a bubble tea shop. And at the beginning, all the bubble tea shops are extremely crowded. And I remember in my area, SS15 in Subang was a mess to go.
Yeah. I was just about to tell you, there's a one whole street in Subang, right? It's all bubble tea shop. I can believe it. There's too many choices.
It's just 500 meters from my office here, so I know it very well. I can see it from my window. And you know, then at a certain point when the wave somehow exhausts, I'm just simplifying a very complex theory, but somehow only few shops survive. So at the beginning, you were in a situation in which you have 0 bubble tea. Then you go to 1 bubble tea. Then you go to 100 bubble teas. And then maybe after the depression, after the end of the cycle of the bubble tea, you stop at 20. So the economy has changed for good. So we live now in a world with bubble tea. But the 100 bubble teas were something not physiological with the structure of the economy, was a momentary phenomenon, and the economy stabilized at, let's say, 20 bubble tea. And the economy is better off now because we have bubble tea. So consumers have something more than before they didn't have. But in order to settle in a sustainable world made of bubble tea, we had to go through the bubble tea bubble. Okay? So innovation creates instability. And the crisis is actually, so the downturn of economic cycle is actually that moment of cleaning the process to reach a new stability, a new point of equilibrium, which is different from where it was before, but is better than where it was before. But you need to go through this. It's unavoidable. Yeah. And this remains, I think that, you know, economic theory doesn't invent things. It reads phenomena. No, it's like when you discover the gravity grave. It's not that you created, so the gravity force. You don't create the gravity force. The gravity force was already there. You just simply observe, the gravity force. Okay. The same goes for economic theory. So innovation and economic cycles were there before Schumpeter wrote about them.
Yeah, exactly.
But Schumpeter put those phenomena in a form that we can understand. So we look at the bubble tea. Oh, see, this is like exactly like Schumpeter was describing them. So this, I think, is the beauty of an economist like Schumpeter that was a genius. You take his 1911 book, The Theory of Economic Development. You find no formula there. It's something that everybody with an average education can read. Fascinating, like reading a novel, and yet making an impact that after 113 years, we are still talking about it. I don't believe that we are going to talk about so many of all this new econometric development in 100 years. Because they don't discover anything.
Okay, Carmelo. Okay, let's look at, because you mentioned about quite a few times about economic theory. So let's look into a little bit more focus. What kind of macroeconomics instrument exists to implement ecologically sustainable growth rates of GDP, in your point of view?
Well, again, if we look at the macroeconomics in the way in which macroeconomics is described in textbook, I think it will be very challenging, because then the economy becomes a whiteboard or blackboard exercise. But the economy doesn't work like that. It's only because of simplicity of reading, in example, the GDP, that we put the GDP in a formula. But that formula is the result of the forces, like Keynes was calling them, the forces of time and ignorance. That means individuals that are ignorant. I mean, we don't know anything, but struggle through reality, driven by our expectations, in a process that happens in time. And that's why, if we want to use a macroeconomic category, that macroeconomic is innovation. But we need to understand innovation as Schumpeter understood it. Schumpeter made very clear that innovation is not the result of government policies. Innovation is the result of entrepreneurial spirits that are, and in the way in which he describes entrepreneurship is extremely fascinating. You teach in an econ faculty, is you take any microeconomics books that discuss market forms or the target of the firms. No, probably you also teach these things. The maximization of profit, the minimization of costs, marginal revenues equal marginal costs, and etc. But all these discussions happen without talking about who is setting those targets. And those targets are set by entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are those that create innovation. And they don't look much at marginal revenues and marginal costs. They are driven by a vision, first and foremost. In fact, for Schumpeter, innovators, entrepreneurs, are more similar to warlords that are driven by a thirst for conquer and by the joy of creation. These categories have been wiped out from economic theory because economic theory is entrapped into the anxiety of formalizing. So most of modern economists are unable to read books that are not made of formulas, are not able to understand things that are explained in a discursive way, because but it doesn't fit in a model, because the reality doesn't fit in a model. The reality cannot be encapsulated in a model. So the only thing, to come back to your question, that we can do is to have, as much as possible, a policy framework that reward entrepreneurship and reward innovation. That's the only way in which we can really develop macroeconomic agenda that is driven towards sustainability.
Carmelo, how given the existing capitalist system as we know it today, can a low or even zero growth economy be established?
Why do we want that? So
I just want to hear your point. Yeah.
No, in the sense that I'm very critical about the degrowth conversation, because growth is positive. We want people to be better off, and the end of the story. We don't want people to become poorer. Why do we want people to become poorer? The issue is that I think that through an orientation toward innovation, we can achieve both targets of economic growth and economic sustainability. If the two things are disjoint, so somehow if in order to achieve sustainability, we need to become poorer, there is something wrong. I think we got something wrong there. And the idea that in order to become rich, we must destroy the planet is also wrong. The same. So we need to find the balance there, and the balance is, again, innovation.
You know, one of the reasons why I was asking is I know that it sounds a bit provocative, but of course I had the reason why I asked it, because if you look at the world today, but not all countries like what we think, and also certain countries, in certain regions, certain continents, also they don't want to grow their economics, so they don't want to grow. They just want to be stagnant. So I think, of course, I'm not going to name the countries, because that doesn't sound politely here. But of course, I think in the certain part of the region, continent, certain places, certain countries, they don't want to grow. So you can see they just like all day long, all year long, all decades long, they're always poor. And then they feel okay because they believe in what they believe. So they just like, religions become their dogma, things like that. So they believe in all this. So, but of course, there's a people thinking about such a way. That's the reason I put forward this provocative thought. What do you think about this?
I think in this regard, we must distinguish countries that, because of a certain cultural belief, they don't embrace technological development, and I think we should respect that. Is if the common feeling of a society is to reject technology, we should not force technology upon them. If it is a shared feeling, but then we have different cases of countries like my own country that have been stagnant. I think similar to Japan in a certain way. But in this case, we are talking about countries which have already achieved a certain level of welfare, certain level of wealth in general. And at the same time, they are stagnant from a demographic perspective. Then, if you have already achieved a certain level of growth, certain level of wealth, and you are not making babies, then why growth further? Because I think one of the key determinant of economic growth is demographic growth. Because this go very much into the micro element of society. I try to work hard, and like me, many other people, because I have children.
We are working very hard.
We work very hard because we want to leave something more to our children, no? But if I look at my life now at my age, and I have been working now for 30 years. I started work when I was very young, so I'm 46 now. So I started to work at 16. So I've been working for the past 30 years on a regular basis. If I had no children now, I would probably stop working and just read books. I said, okay, I have enough saving. What's the point to contribute to the growth? Because ultimately, we contribute to the growth of the country because we want to contribute to the growth of our family. So,
the bubble tea.
No, if you think about it, when you go to work and you try to generate an income, you do that for your family first, and then indirectly you do it for your nation.
And then, of course, we can afford the bubble tea later on.
Then you can afford the bubble tea.
We can afford the bubble tea.
Exactly. So I think that sometimes there is, I think also in Malaysia there is the attempt to have this connection between fundamental values, which are religion, family, and nation. So believe in your religion, believe in your family, try to work for your family and contribute to the nation. These are things that in the process of cultural evolution are indeed interrelated. Because if you have a religious perspective, you believe in the future. No, you believe, you work hard. Also, you try to achieve heaven. You try to do good to achieve also a metaphysical reward. And in order to do that, you try to do good for your family, and then you try to do good for your nation. And these generate also a positive economic growth. But at a certain point, if you don't believe in the future, say there is nothing after that, you don't have a family then you try to do just as little as you can.
And of course you can't. Of course. And after that, then you can't get your bubble tea. Okay.
But okay, this is of course a generalization. Then there are always people that hardworking and creative, even if they don't have a religion or don't have a family. So I don't want to give the impression of. But
Yeah, of
So
course.
this
Yeah,
is
of course.
very general terms, but indeed,
Mhm.
a certain network of belief, so between religion, family, and the nation, can create a virtuous circle of
Mm.
action that benefits society.
Mm. Okay. Let's look at the policy a bit, and based upon that, what kind of regulation and policies are needed to implement growth rates detected by the ecological needs?
So, if I was a policymaker, I would first and foremost act thinking about long term,
Mhm.
something that can create a change in the long term. And I think, in this sense, we need two types of action. One is in education, so an
Mhm.
education in which humanities have a bigger role, so that people can become more critical thinkers.
Mhm.
This is point one. Second point is try to have measures that favor industrial consolidation, because only industrial consolidation can bring technical progress. And third is to try to create an innovation table which brings together academia,
Mhm.
policymakers, and the industrial world to try to create that process, to stimulate that process of reflection, bottom up, by having the different parties dialoguing together.
Okay. Carmelo, more than 75 years, economist Joseph Schumpeter described the dynamic pattern in which innovative upstarts unseat established firms through a process he called creative destruction. While most 21st century economists have focused on the competition under condition of static equilibrium, Schumpeter insists that disequilibrium was the driving force of capitalism. The theme of the creative destruction has received growing attention ever since. So, there is now a little doubt that the economy is driven by firms that are able to capitalize on the new combination described by Schumpeter, which is coal age technologies gave way to oil age technologies that are now giving way to information age technologies. With each change, the technological and economic infrastructure of society experiences dramatic transformation with new institutions, enterprises, and geographical patterns of development created. So, do you think innovation can be underpinned by different values and purposes?
Yes, you see, innovation always reflects the value of a nation, the needs. Of course, innovation is the creative response to human needs, but human needs are dictated by values. You know, um, if people like music, innovation will try the way to bring always more more music, better music, and different technological support or approach to fruibility of music. But if the people don't like music, then there will be no innovation in the music sector. We will not have the iPod or the new ways, the Blu-ray, or the new ways in which we listen to music. So ultimately, it goes back to the values that are shared by a community, because we don't have to think about the economy as something disjoint from the values. The economy is the result of that values. This is the opposite view that Marx had. Marx was thinking that first we have the economic mode of production, and then we have the values that justify that mode of production. Here I'm embracing a different perspective, and I think Schumpeter was on the same line, that the economic decisions that are made every day as the response to a set of values. And that's why I stress of the importance of education first. Because only, in fact, Schumpeter in a conference in 1945 in Canada, he was talking about the possibility for an alternative to capitalism. Okay, he would say because capitalism is creating, at the time was creating social problems, etc. So how do we respond to that? And he was very provocative. Schumpeter has this motto: "Et peut-être bourgeois." So try to astonish the people that are able to astonish the bourgeois. And he was saying, what's the alternative to capitalism? He said the real alternative is Catholic corporatism. At that time, the Pope had just issued a new document called Encyclica Quadragesimo Anno, in which was trying to revive the medieval idea of corporatism, which is completely different from what we intend corporatism in the modern American jargon. So now we don't have time for a lecture in economic history, but try to look at what
another session.
Another session. What medieval corporations were inspired by Catholic values and etc. So Schumpeter said that is the real alternative. But if we want to change the system, we cannot change it top down. We need to have a community, a society that feels represented by that set of values that inspire medieval corporation to be created. And then only that the system can change. So the change of system is primarily a change of values. When a community share a different view, then the economic structure will reflect the change of view. So it's primarily a cultural revolution, a value revolution, rather than an economic revolution first.
All right, Carmelo. This is a great thank you so much for giving us the time today from your busy schedule. I know that you are popular and famous and you're busy, so it's not that easy to get you on board, but thank you very much for sharing all of your expertise, and it gave us a lot to think about as well, and this is very much appreciated. It is absolutely my pleasure as well as a privilege, Carmelo. I appreciate it. Lo apprezzo.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure indeed. Very honored to be your guest.
Thank you. Gracias. Okay. Right. There's a lot of points I made out. Also taken as a note. I think I'd like to share with all of you a little sharing here. The traditional forms of energy that have powered human progress over the last century are evolving. The demand for affordable and reliable energy is only increasing. The challenge at hand is how to continue to power human progress in a way that is reliable and affordable, but also critically more sustainable and equitable. In terms of energy demand, energy is critical to all sectors of the economy to provide growth and wealth creation across geographies. Increasing demand for lower carbon energy will forge innovation, new products, and new businesses. So yes, the keywords for today is affordability, reliability, sustainability, and of course, equity in empowering the energy transition. On that note, we will have to call it a day for this evening. And so for our technical master, and of course, student services and marketing team, a thumb up from here. Spotlight Dialogue series organized by Special Interest Group in Circular Economy from Integrated Sustainability and Creative Strategies Research Cluster at Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, APU. Till then, take care and each other. Happy evening.